here sort of in two capacities, in that I am here as a board member of the SBAC, the Small Business Advocacy Council, and as the chair of the Job One program. And am happy to introduce Elliot in both of those capacities because I first met him, I think it was 6 years ago now, when the SBAC was still small and probably not much of anything. And now they are a sort of major bipartisan player in politics throughout the state of Illinois, getting things passed at the state level, local levels, and have really found a way with that bipartisan stance of, and really in the support of small businesses, and being able to truly get things done and get through sort of the mess that can be Illinois politics. But then also want to, of course, say as chair of Job One, that I really appreciate how Elliot and his team at the SBAC, with their through their Empower programs, that they've started getting more involved in the charitable work and not-for-profit work. But they've agreed to partner with and work with Job One in helping to promote the program and to push the program with their members and with their membership. So, line was going to be that they've already helped us find spots for probably 2 to 3 students, and things are just with them promoting, you know, Rotary through their membership, through their organization, through all the great work they do. Felt it was only good and right that we, of course, give them a platform and let them speak and let us see why they make such a good partner for Rotary. So with that, I welcome Elliot Richardson.
Well, thank you all for having me very much. And thank you, Carl, for your service on the SBAC board and for inviting us out here tonight, or today, I should say, and for all the great work that you guys do. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the SBAC, the Small Business Advocacy Council. I'll also talk a little bit about our agenda, what's going on in government. There's a pretty big mayoral election going on today in the city of Chicago, so we can touch on that as well. We've done some work in that space over the past several weeks and months. But here's sort of the way I'd like to do this, if it's okay. Just ask questions if you've got them as we're going on, okay? Listening to me talk for any extended length of time, my children will tell you, is incredibly boring. So fire questions away as I'm talking, okay? It's actually very much appreciated. So, we started the SBAC about 8 years now. It's been a long time. We really began the organization because some folks, myself included, some Republicans, some Democrats, some folks who probably weren't affiliated, just got really tired of hearing a lot of lip service about small business and not a lot of action. Back, if you remember the times when they used to actually put 2 people on TV from different parties before you had those round tables on like Meet the Press, and used to have like a Republican senator and a Democratic senator. And if you counted the times they used the word small business to try to make a political point, at some point you would just get so aggravated you would have to stop counting. So we formed the SBAC, and the purpose of the organization was to push forward good legislation and good policy that's laser focused on making the state and the economy of the nation better, but also on empowering small businesses. So we've passed about 6 pieces of legislation over the past 3 or 4 years, I would say. We can go through some of that, but I want to talk a little bit about why we've been successful, because we really have been quite successful. And I can say that very modestly because it's not about me. I was just a guy yelling at those politicians on TV. Before we started the organization, it's all the people in the SBAC. It's our board members, it's our staff, it's our coalition partners. Sometimes we have 30 different chambers of commerce that will form a coalition to work with us on a given issue. They get the job done, and they pass the legislation that lowered LLC fees, or that did other things that we'll talk about right now. But you know, what I would say is our keys to success is the fact that we are nonpartisan, and we're bipartisan. We are not partisan. And by doing that, we gain credibility with both Republicans in the legislature and Democrats in the legislature. We've had Governor Quinn support our legislation, we've had Governor Rauner support our legislation, and I suspect we'll have Governor Pritzker support our legislation. Our Our pieces of legislation have been sponsored by Democrats and Republicans alike. And when we come into a room or we do a legislative forum, and I moderate many of them, people know we're not loaded up against one party or the other, because the enemy of good policy is toxic politics. And frankly, our members are quite tired of it. And that is why we believe we're able to do some good things in Springfield. The other thing is being nonpartisan makes us incredibly unpredictable. So if you're always going one way or the other, I'll tell you, the politicians in your camp take you for granted, because they know no matter what happens, you're probably not going to oppose them. And the politicians in the other camp really don't care about talking to you, because they know no matter what they do, you're not going to be on their team. So by being nonpartisan and working with everybody, and also calling folks from both parties out, which we do, if they're not supportive of our legislative initiative in a respectful way, we're able to move the needle. So that's one of what I would say is the keys to our success. The next is critical mass. So the Small Business Advocacy Council itself has about 500 members that are in the organization. That does not move the needle. What moves the needle is coalitions of 30,000, 20,000, 10,000. And that's what we've been able to build on almost every piece of legislation that we're going to talk about today. So this is going out to other business organizations, civic organizations, saying we're not a threat, we don't want to take your members. We want to work with you on good policy, and will you come on board and sign on it? And we've had tremendous success doing that. So I would say that's our second really good piece of one of our components for success. The next is government affairs. We have very good people on staff who understand politics, and they also understand policy. And they're able to go to Springfield or go to DC or go to City Hall and get work done. And we want to be a resource for other groups to be able to move public policy. So that's really the third thing I think that set us apart over the past couple of years when it comes to getting policy making done. And I would say the fourth thing is you've got to be incredibly persistent. So when we started the organization, nobody knew how to draft a bill. Nobody knew how to move a piece of legislation. And we figured out it's very difficult to move a piece of legislation, but it's not so difficult to get it introduced. You take a good idea, you find a sponsor, they send it to this organization called LRB, and next thing you know, you've got a bill. And then you get co-sponsors on your bill, and then you start to put political pressure on those that you need to try to move your bill, again, in a respectful manner, and next thing you know, your bill might pass the House, or it might pass the Senate, and then you're like, wow, I got a bill that just passed the House, so now I better get some Senate co-sponsors. And then you do that, and you do that through the different organizations that you work with. So if you're in Lakeview, and we partner with the Lakeview Chamber of Commerce, you're going to ask those folks in Lakeview to contact our legislator in Lakeview, because that's where the votes are. And we'll do the same thing in Aurora, and we'll do the same thing all over the place. And next thing you know, you might get that bill past the Senate. There's all these political obstacles. I'll tell you, we just had a piece of legislation. Since 1934, it was illegal to serve a glass of wine or a beer in a restaurant that was within 100 feet of a church. Okay? That was a prohibition statute. There was one way to get around it. If you had the time and the money to hire a lobbyist to draft a bill for your specific restaurant, put that bill to the General Assembly and get that signed by the governor, then your specific restaurant could serve beer or wine. The problem is, on the south side of Chicago and the west side of Chicago, there were many streets that may have 9 or 10 storefront churches on the street. And by the way, we had no opposition from any religious affiliated party at all for this legislation. Just, it had never been changed. So we drafted legislation, we put it forth in the House, we got it passed, it got passed in the Senate, and then all of a sudden we had a roadblock. The roadblock was, one party really didn't want to give another party a win during this past legislative session. And those are the sort of things that come up. Now, we were also able to put enough pressure on legislators to make sure that that got done. And Governor Rauner signed that bill with bipartisan support. But my point is, there's always going to be political obstacles, and you have to be persistent. It took us 3 years to lower LLC fees. It will take us 5 years in total to change gerrymandering and to end gerrymandering if we're able to get it done. But every year, you got to take your lumps, you get knocked down, it's really, really frustrating. You got to get back up and reintroduce that bill and run the ball right down the center of the field. So that's sort of what I would say our fourth factor helps us succeed is we are remarkably, you could call it stubborn, you could call it persistent, but we keep coming back. And the fifth thing I would say that's helped us be successful is we have really nice relationships with legislators on both sides of the aisle. And that's really important. And it is important to hold legislators to task when they do something that isn't aligned with your membership or their interests. But it's also important to develop relationships so they know that if they go the other way, they have an ally. And we really work on fostering those relationships because at the end of the day, despite the rap that most politicians get, most of them are there in their own way to try to do good. So we try to appreciate that, recognize that, and work with them. And then finally, you've got to make it personal. Every one of our legislative initiatives has been grounded in something that one of our members or coalition partners said to us. So one member at a policy committee meeting 5 years ago said, do you know we have the highest LLC fees in the nation? And we paid $500 for a new LLC and $250 at the time we renew it, and I've got a bunch of LLCs, and it's like a tax. And it's not fair, because corporations pay much, much less. So we drafted a bill based on what he said, and again, 3 years later, instead of $500 for an LLC, it's now $150 to file an LLC. And instead of paying $250 every year to renew your LLC, it's $75. And that's how it's priced. I know you're
Benefits for everybody.
But that really does help us compete with other states. Here's the net result of that. LLC filings in LLC this year are up 66%. 66%. Those were people that were filing in other states, they were giving other states their money, and now they're doing it here. Or they're forming as the right entity, as opposed to subchapter S, if there was no reason for them to do that. So those are some of the things that we do to try to make a positive difference. What I'll do now is talk a little bit about what our legislative agenda has been and what it will be, or what it is right now, I would say. Any questions? Again, please answer. If anybody, does anyone want to talk about the mayoral race at all? All right, I'll take it. Yes.
What, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Why did this small business go after gerrymandering?
That's a great question. So that's probably one of the most passionate issues among our members is gerrymandering. So the SBC, I'm going to get there, I promise. We separate our legislation into like structural changes that make Illinois a better place to own and operate a business, make it a better place to live, and restore the confidence that businesses might have in the state of Illinois. And then we have issues that are laser focused on leveling the playing field for small businesses, and then legislation focused on economic development. And they cross over. I actually worked with one of your members, Elliot, Vasquez, on a piece of legislation last year, which accomplished all of that, I think. So, gerrymandering, the problem with gerrymandering for small business owners is, or entrepreneurs, is they feel that they don't have a voice in politics. And when we sit around at our policy committee meetings and we say, what will restore your confidence in Illinois and make you want to grow in this state, often there's got to be fair elections. And if you look at the way the maps are drawn in Illinois, it's absolutely ridiculous. And you don't have a voice. So if you're thinking about, should I grow in Indiana, or should I go to Wisconsin, or should I stay here, if you can't impact the politics, if you can't make your legislator more beholden to you as a business owner and a constituent in all of your community, then legislative leaders in Springfield, it really matters to small business owners. So we took that issue up. We've actually been probably the leading business group in Illinois on gerrymandering and putting an end to gerrymandering. We've worked with the League of Women's Voters and a bunch of other really great organizations. We've done editorials on it, appeared at editorial boards. We think gerrymandering is a really terrible thing for Illinois. So our organization is laser focused on doing everything that we can to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot that would provide for fair maps and an independent commission to draw those maps. So that's why that's one of our most important structural issues. And if you get on the call with our policy committee, they'll tell you time and again, it's as important as lowering LLC fees for them. It's restoring faith in their ability to grow their businesses in this state.
Does that gerrymandering, does that impact the state senate in Springfield, but also in DC as well? Because there've been some people who've been gerrymandered out of their home, basically, and they were the sitting congressperson in Winnetka.
Yeah, the legislation right now would do that. And last year we had enough Senate sponsors on that legislation to actually get a call for a vote and to prevail in the Senate. Unfortunately, it was never called for a vote. So what's going to need to happen is going to need to be tremendous grassroots support for people who really care about this issue. Change Illinois is a leading group trying to fight gerrymandering. And has anyone heard of Madeline Duback? She was the editor of the Daily Herald and then was with Reboot Illinois, I believe is our editor. She's taken on the post of, well, she's running Change Illinois and their initiative on gerrymandering. I cannot think of a better person. She is really, really good. And if somebody is going to move this down the field, it's going to be Madeline. And I just had lunch with her, and she's very dedicated to doing that. So, and it would be congressional districts as well. So, any other questions before I continue? All right, so what I'll do is I'll start with some of the stuff that we've done that's small business centric, the legislation that's laser focused on small businesses. So we've talked about LLC fees. On the city level, we've made some pretty nice changes. Right now, if you get cited by the city of Chicago, and we're in Chicago, so we'll talk about this, you have to go to an administrative hearing and hire an attorney, even if it's for a citation like your business license expired. And that costs a small business owner an entire day, and they have to pay an attorney. So I'm an attorney. So everybody might not be happy about this in my circles. But there are now 10 ordinances where you do not have to hire an attorney. You do not have to go to administrative hearing. You can just send in a check if you do not want to contest a particular citation or ordinance violation, and we'd like to expand that out to any of these different ordinance violations that don't impact the health and the safety of people in the city of Chicago. So there's no reason why somebody should have to take a day off of work, go down, and just write a check after hiring an attorney. Let's let people do it on their own. We ease restrictions for home-based businesses. It used to be that if you had a business out of your house, you could not have 2 people working for that business, even if somebody was never in the house, if it was just a salesperson. Really served absolutely no purpose. That's now done. You can now make things that aren't perishable in your home and sell them at a store. You couldn't do that before. So there's a bunch of sort of arcane rules that we were able to change with respect to home-based businesses. And something we're working on now, and we've been working on, is, if you want to hang a sign in the city of Chicago outside your business, even if it overhangs your storefront, like if this is your store and it overhangs by this much, you have to put that permit through city council. And the entire city council has to approve that sign permit. And it took 120 days before. So there were businesses that could open and close before they got their sign permit. So we shaved that time in half. But now what we want to do is we want to eliminate the entire process of going through city council like rational cities do. What we've asked every mayoral candidate, and we sent out a survey to all the mayoral candidates, and we said one question: if you're elected mayor, will you submit an ordinance and support that would eliminate the requirement that a sign permit, a public way use permit for signs, would need to go through city council and be approved by the entire city council? And 9 of the candidates answered, including Mendoza, and Mr. Daley, and President Predwinkle, and Gary Chico, sorry. They all said they would, with the exception of President Predwinkle, who did say she wants to reduce red tape, but did not answer that specific question. So what we were trying to do is put folks on the record before they're in office, so that when they get into office, we can show them what they submitted before they got into office. That's not unique, but something we do. Yes?
What's an example of another question that you've asked these mayoral candidates about that relates to small business?
We asked lots and lots of questions during a forum. So you can get that online. We had 1,500 people live stream that forum. Okay. And we asked a slew of questions, from questions about SSAs, to tax credits, to all different sorts of things. So, and we got some very interesting answers on a lot of this. So property taxes is a huge deal. Vacant properties is a really, really big deal in neighborhoods around the city of Chicago. So people get tax incentives for vacant properties, and that really has a detrimental effect on a lot of communities on the west and southwest side. So, and the west side. So we've talked to them about a lot of different things, and they're engaged. You know, we were meeting with the city of Chicago and all of their commissioners, or staff members from the commissioners, depending on the day, for a while to discuss different issues on a monthly basis. What I would say is I think it's probably more effective to just draft legislation and try to get sponsors. I think the meetings tend to result in, to be completely frank with you, slow plays on things, and you get a lot better results by just drafting something, getting sponsors, and then taking it to the people and trying to get involved. So that's what's going on, at least from our perspective with the city. There will be a mayoral runoff, we believe. And when there is a runoff, we'll have a debate, and we'll bring them in, and we're looking forward to really pressing them on the small business issues. So they can attack themselves at other forums. That was one of the rules that we set out when that forum began. I mean, there's been lots of places where they can go at each other. It's a really good theater. It's really interesting. Unfortunately, it doesn't help a small business. With their property taxes, putting up a sign, or operating their business, it's just good theater. So our forums and debates don't have any of that. We want substantive answers. And it might not always be as exciting, but it's a lot more informative and a lot better for small businesses. So, on our agenda statewide right now there is a small business tax credit that expired in 2016. It was a $2,500 tax credit for businesses that hired a new employee full-time. And a lot of our members used that. And it expired in 2016, and we tried to bring it back last year, and we had no luck. So we're trying to move that again. Senator Staines, we really enjoyed working with Senator Staines. She's the chief sponsor of that bill. And we've done the math, and the revenue loss to the state will be erased after somebody's employed for 2 years at $15 an hour. And the average length of an employee in this space is 4 years, based on national statistics. So I think we're going to be able to thwart that revenue loss argument, and it caps out at $50 million over a 5 or 6 year period. So that's one of the small business pieces that we're working on this year. Occupational licensing is another one. Our occupational licensing in Illinois is out of control. We have 400 occupational licenses. And if you want to be a barber, 1,500 hours of training and a ton of money to have to do it. And it's across the board. So we have pieces of legislation that we're moving right now that would make the state assess, does an occupational license make sense, or is it there to protect an existing group that sort of has their stake in the sand right now and would like to keep that relatively exclusive. That's called the sunrise provision. We also want to make portability better. So if you're in Iowa, and I just use barbers as an example, there are 400 occupational licenses, you could come to Illinois and practice your trade as well without having to go through all that training again. So that's another piece of legislation, and that sort of dovetails into something we passed last year, which requires all agencies that pass new regulations that impact small businesses to assess the impact that will have on small businesses and allow us to weigh in before a rule is passed by an agency. So these are some of the small business things that we work on, and then we have things we worked on now last year, which was, you've got an opioid crisis in the country right now, in the state of Illinois, and what we did, Nellie came to us and said, can we work together on this? And we said, well, let us look at the impact that opioids has on small businesses. Well, it has a tremendous impact on small businesses, and I'm glad that she came to us, because we were able to then look at that. Productivity is devastated by opioid abuse when employees suffer from opioid abuse. Workers' comp rates are 6 times higher to treat somebody who gets hooked on opioids, and health insurance rates go up. So we were able to work together to pass legislation that now will allow and not mandate insurance companies to provide coverage for residential care for opioid abuse. And we think that's really good for the state. It's really good for people. And it's also really good for small businesses. So these are some of the other things that we've done. Any questions at all? Because I've been talking a lot. All right. We have a bill this year called the Regulatory Sandbox Bill. So if you're in fintech or financial services, or you're an entrepreneur, you can, yes, 5 minutes, okay. I thought you had a question. You can now test out your product without being constrained by many of the rules and regulations that the state has. And you can get that out to up to 30,000 people. It's called playing in the sandbox, to see whether or not it makes sense for you to invest more in your product. We have a good feeling that we might be able to move that bill. The Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunities is deeply engaged in that bill. So that's another thing on our agenda. I mean, something was just brought to us actually yesterday. We've been working on unemployment tax relief for quite some time and allowing people to prorate those unemployment taxes over the first 3 quarters. We had that bill filed like 4 years ago and it didn't move. And I thought it was dead. You know, I thought it was buried somewhere. It came back. Somebody just filed it. So we're going to try to work on that. So our plate is always getting more full, but we like to encourage people to come to us with any other ideas that they have. And then I'll close, and I know I did what I probably didn't want to do, which was just give you a laundry list of the things that we might be able to move. But on a federal level, we're really advocating on behalf of the Federal Student Debt Relief Act. And, you know, this would allow employers to pay about $5,000 to their employees to bring down their student debt. It's tax-free, and the employer would be able to deduct that from their taxes, or take a deduction from that, much like a 401k. That had 127 sponsors, bipartisan support. We'll be running that down the center of the field as well. So, in a nutshell, we've got a very full plate. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and tell you all about it. If there's any piece of legislation that interests you, any way you'd like to get involved, or anything we can do to help your business, this is really where it all starts, is from the people that are out there doing what they do every day.
I
Yes?
have a quick question. How do you let people know about your organization so that they can contact you and?
Thank you. You just made Kim very happy. You can find out more about us. We've got a website. It's sbacil.org. We also do a lot for a lot of the chambers of commerce. But yeah, you can go on there, and if you reach out to us, we'll get back to you. We have a policy committee where you can weigh in on all these different types of things and let us know what's on your mind.
And they have a ton of events throughout, like, everywhere.
We do. We do. We have a lot of events. Advocacy-wise, and also trying to connect people together. So, we'd love to see you guys again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.